So good afternoon, my name's Melissa, and I am a gymnastics coach, specifically rhythmic gymnastics coach, and I'll say a bit more about what the differences are later on.
I am James, I am from the Zone London, and I am from Freelance Media, and I am representing basketball.
So in terms of what made me get involved with my sport, it's like a bit of a complicated story. I think a lot of kids when they're younger, they like messing around, jumping around, like everyone tries to do a handstand, everyone tries to do a roly-poly. And then at some point their parents freak out and like, oh my God, like you're gonna break your neck. So they like channeled me to do it in the proper way, basically. So I went to something that was like tumble tots, where like there's lots of soft things that you can throw yourself at and not get injured. And from there, I went on to sort of go to proper classes. And then I sort of went through like a talent stream type system and ended up in kind of the elite part of the sport. And I guess I was really lucky because there was a high performance gymnastics club about 10 minutes from my house. And people from all over London and the Southeast would come there to train, and people would come to train specifically under my coach once I was in that elite program. So it's kind of by chance that that venue was just close to me. So I competed until sort of my teenage years. After that, because I was training sort of 35 hours plus a week, I needed to focus on school, otherwise I would end up with nothing in life. And sort of go to university. And at university, I got back involved with gymnastics. I joined the gymnastics club there, and then I was involved in sort of running the club in my final year, and partly in my second year as well. And so once I finished uni, as a side job whilst I was studying further for my PhD, I did some admin for a gymnastics club, and they encouraged me to do my coaching qualifications. And that's kind of how I've got to where I am now. And I'm kind of the co-director of a club in North London. And that kind of happened by accident because there was kind of as we know, a lockdown, COVID, lots of people left community sport because they just couldn't commit the time and the resource for basically no money. So me and the other co-director, we run it sort of on a volunteer basis. And we don't coach for free, but all the admin stuff we're doing for free at the moment.
How I got into basketball was, I think I was in year 9 in school, and I think I got fed up with football. I think football is just so thrown down our throats, especially in the UK. It's kind of like as you grow up, you want to be a football player. All you want to do is football, football, football. But I realized I wasn't seeing as many black role models in football. And then one time, I don't know what I was doing. I must have been up way before I should have been in bed. And I started watching basketball, and I realized like I could just relate to all these different people. All these different people looked like me, and it made me feel like this is something I want to get involved in. So I remember I watched the NBA game. I think it was the Orlando Magic against Cleveland Cavaliers. I watched that game, and then the next day I went into school and I said, where's the basketball? Where's the basketball? I want to do basketball. I want to do basketball. And then from there, there was a new coach that came in, and there was maybe 10 of us doing basketball. And then I think from those 10 people, like we kind of created a community, a family sort of thing. And I hadn't felt that when I was playing football, because I played football from maybe 3 to like 13, 14 years old. And I'd never felt like I was a part of a family, funny enough. So as soon as I started playing basketball, I had that kind of family feeling, and I just kept on learning about basketball. I would referee local games at a local leisure centre for free, just because I wanted to learn more about basketball. As I got older, I played more basketball. I was in a basketball team at school, in college, and then at university, I played a year basketball. Ultimately, I realised I'm not good enough to go to the next level. So then I just started to write about basketball, do a podcast about basketball, and just continuing my love for basketball, really.
No, that's really cool. And I think there's definitely like a transition, isn't there? Like when you get to a certain age and you know, like you're not going to have your dream of like competing at the highest level, to get involved in other ways.
Yeah.
And it's about having like that support and that path to do that, because not everyone does.
Do you think had the gymnasium been so close to you, do you think you would have had the same opportunities to learn?
No, I definitely think it was just like pure luck. Like I said, that there's another one that's kind of near as well, but it's really impossible to get to by public transport. So, you know, if like my grandma and granddad like lived at one end of the town we lived in and we lived at the other end, and the gym was kind of in the middle, so it didn't really matter where I was. It became like slightly more complicated when I went to school out of the area and I had to come back to train.
Yeah. So
I'd always be late and stuff like that, and then have to do conditioning because I wasn't on time and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think they put me into that because it was there and it was very prominent. Like you'd walk down the high street and you could see that existed.
Yeah.
So when they thought of what sports put me in, that was kind of probably the first one they saw, even before football or netball or tennis or anything like that. So definitely that's why I got channeled that way, because otherwise they probably would have put me into dance or something, but dance just wasn't as obvious.
Yeah.
Definitely. So in terms of sort of how you're continuing, do you do coaching? Do you still play for fun, or is it mostly you're on the commentary side and the refereeing side now?
It's always about playing for fun. Whenever, obviously, in lockdowns changed it, like what you can and can't do. But I always just made it a duty to always play basketball with my friends, and I think that's something that we just continue all throughout. And it's just, I think it's good, even if you're not. It's always good to keep playing a sport, whether you're playing it with friends, whether you're doing it professionally. It's always good, because I think that's the whole, especially with the sport, it's that belonging, that family that you have, and it's like. People I probably wouldn't talk to on an everyday basis. We just play basketball together, and like for those 2 hours, like it's heaven sort of thing. So I think it's always good to stay close to the sport.
Yeah, I think what you were just talking about is kind of what I'm jealous about of team sport, because gymnastics is like a very individual sport.
Yeah.
Compared to basketball, and so you're always kind of, even when you're friends with someone, you're kind of competing against them. So like my best friend that I trained with, and she was in the same age group as me, and sort of one of us always had to be better, right? Because we go to the same competitions, we had the same coach. And like even when you're not the same age, you're kind of competing for that coach's attention, or you're competing to be like the best in your club, or the one who's seen as having the most talent. And you kind of lose out on that like aspect of supporting each other and like properly cheering each other on, without like that secret intention that, if the other person drops this, then I'm gonna be able to beat them and all that kind of stuff. So it's not as much as a healthy healthy environment as maybe team sport is, because you're kind of, all of you need to perform well together, rather than sort of waiting for someone to maybe slip up.
So I think it is interesting when you hear from someone that does a sport by themselves saying that team sports are more together, because they can be for the most part because of the camaraderie, but there also is that side of the coach always has their kind of favorites, and it's kind of like, how do you integrate yourself into those favorites? Would you say with gymnastics, was a lot of your friends interested in gymnastics, or was it just something that you kind of had to tell them about?
To be honest, I didn't have time really to even have friends. So my friends were the people that I did gymnastics with. So I would train maybe after school from 4:30 until 8 p.m. And my friends would kind of be interested in it, or 9 even some days, because I'd tell them about it and they'd be like, oh, you're coming to this party? And I'd be like, oh no, like I can't sleep over. I've got to train at 9 in the morning or 7 or whatever ridiculousness it was at times. So yeah, I think my friends were the other people that I trained with, and like probably my best friend still now is that same person I train with, and I think we had gone to the same primary school as well, so we kind of knew of each other. But we're in different, she is a year older than me, but in the same year in terms of sport, because they do it by birth year, not school year. So yeah, we were really close, and other people, they kind of were interested in it, because obviously at school I'd tell them, I did this at the weekend, but it was, I don't think they had that kind of enthusiasm. They weren't ever like, oh, Melissa, like, how was training? They never, they were like, oh yeah, that thing again, that's all you ever talk about type thing. So what about you?
I more became closer to the basketball friends, because all of my friends that I had before basketball were just interested in football, really. Because like football like takes over the nation. So it was like, if you're telling your friends, I've got a basketball practice, they're like, what? Why are you playing basketball for? Like, so I found out that like, I then started to be around basketball people more, because it was just, that was the interest that was taking over. I really started to fall in love with basketball. So it's like, that, the more I want to be around people that share that same interest. So it was definitely like I started to develop new friends from it.
Yeah, and I think even now, like if I go through my WhatsApp messages, probably most of them are from the other people that I coach with.
Yeah.
Because we probably talk to each other like every day. Whereas like my other friends, it's much harder because of COVID, and you kind of run out of things to say, don't you? You catch up with people and you're like, what are you doing? Oh, just work and like staying in the house. So you kind of lose track of those conversations, definitely.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just very much, especially because of COVID, it's just not everyone's always in the happiest of space. So it's like, you don't really want to chit chat. Whereas if you have like that shared interest where basketball, you can just say, oh, did you see the game yesterday? And then it's just a lot easier. That's more like a conversation that has its middle and its end, and then you're fine with it.
Yeah, like you're in, it's much easier, definitely.
Yeah.
Those kind of things. So I think in terms of my sport, it's only sort of now having like an increasing influence on Black culture and Black British culture. So obviously the American gymnastics team, they're doing really well, and they have quite a lot of prominent Black stars. But prior to that, it was very much a white sport. So that was mostly due to the finances, I would say. So you'd only have clubs in like certain areas where there was space to have massive halls with really high ceilings. Training at a high level is really expensive because of how many hours you're doing. Competition entries are expensive, travel to competitions, leotards, all that kind of stuff. But nowadays, I think there's a lot more support available from like Sport England, lottery funding. And there's a lot more people who are doing it from sort of less privileged backgrounds, I'd say, or people who don't have that kind of local access that I had and can sort of be funded to travel or get like bursaries or support grants. And especially around COVID, they've been doing a lot of stuff around that. So now as well, there's quite a lot more role models. So there's like Simone Biles in the US, and so in the UK, there's like Becky and Eddie Downey. In terms of men, there's like Lewis Smith, who was in the London Olympics, and sort of Elliot Brown in tumbling, and there's loads more. But sort of my specific discipline, which is rhythmic gymnastics, which is with like hand apparatus, like ball and clubs and ribbon, which I should have bought here so I could show everyone. They're literally right in front of me. It's like there's not any representation of sort of Black bodies at all. It's still got that very much like white aesthetic, because that's considered to be like the ideal type, very long-legged, very thin. It's very much like ballet, where it's taken sort of Black dancers a really long time to break through and be recognized and normalized. And sort of Black bodies are seen as too muscular. So sort of constantly I was being told like your thighs are too big, your legs are too big. And that's still happening to sort of people who are in the sport today. You can't jump because your legs are too heavy, all that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping that this is going to change as, again, the sport continues to become more accessible. And I guess the more people see people like themselves, the more they're going to get involved. And also it tends to be on the increase in a lot of areas of London where there are sort of high populations of people from diverse backgrounds. So there's 2 clubs in like Edmonton, for example, which is definitely not what I would call like a majority white area of London. So it's kind of spreading and it's doing its bits, but I don't think at the moment it's contributing much to Black British culture, sadly.
I'd say I'm very lucky to have found basketball, because I believe it's contributed massively to Black British culture. I think it's like, it's now, before it used to just be the NBA. The NBA used to be, because America's so much bigger than the UK, it's like, we're going to know about these things, whereas they wouldn't really know about soccer over there. But I think we've always been aware of the NBA and stuff like that. Even when people are on holiday, you see it over here when the summer's out, you see NBA jerseys, you see LeBron James, Michael Jordan jerseys. Like a lot of people in the UK wear Jordans. Like Jordan didn't live in the UK, so it's like, it's been around for years. Before me, I'm only 22. Like before me, it's been around and it's going to continue. I think the greatest thing is now that British basketball is slowly getting bigger. So now it's not just NBA. It's like we're starting to see teams like London Lions, which is only in Stratford. They're starting to get a lot more notice. And the thing is, that's helping a lot more players, especially in the UK, want to be at these teams. Sometimes it's not always about going to the NBA. Sometimes it's about playing for London. You grow up in London, you play for London, and just keeping that tradition going. I think even in terminology, a lot of people, like even I saw tweets on Twitter that said they were fed up of putting basketball terms in football, and it shows like the impact that basketball is having in Black cultures. Like now it's even taking over football in a sense. So I think basketball is incredible. I think everyone grew up shouting Kobe as they threw something into a bin. Like I think it's just ingrained in us. So I think basketball is huge to Black British culture.
How do you feel about Ovi from Love Island? Are you? I know.
I love Ovi. I love Ovi. I think once again he is someone that he did an amazing job to help, like, let people know that people from the UK play basketball. Because the thing is, because of Love Island, it seemed like just a dating show. But like from that, there was a spin-off Love Island show where it showed him playing basketball and his girlfriend had come to see him. Like a lot of people, some people aren't even aware that we play basketball here. So it's like someone like Ovi, and the fact that he played at London Lions, it drew so much attention to London Lions, and just kind of it's showing that basketball is cool. It's not just about football. It's not just about cricket or tennis. Like basketball is here, because I think the big problem is the UK doesn't really care about basketball. When I was doing PE lessons, like we would get basketballs and then the PE teachers would just go to the football pitch and we would just play by ourselves. Like that kind of dictated what the PE lesson would be if we wanted to do basketball. So I think there does need to be a lot more effort in getting basketball into schools, because that's the only way kids are going to want to do it. I think it's quite, because of technology now, kids aren't just going to say, I'm going to buy a basketball from Sports Direct and just go to the park. You have to see people playing it. You have to play it at school to then be like, okay, we can do this when we're free. That's why I think I have just missed that social media time. So back then we would go out and just play. Whereas kids now, it's like they'd more play it on like their PS4s and stuff. So I think there needs to be more effort to get that into schools, definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's what you do at school does really shape it. And also what you said around the funding.
Yeah.
Like if nationally, sort of the sport is not getting a lot of funding and there's not that sort of pathway in place of support, then it's really hard for people to get into it, because at some point you're going to have to choose between getting a job and playing when you get to a level, aren't you? And unfortunately with basketball, a lot of people are having to make the wrong choice in terms of the sport.
Yeah.
Because they just can't afford to play and train and continue to sort of have their life outside, because they're not getting the financial support that they need.
Do you think that the young Black people might be scared of gymnastics because they might get criticized for just being themselves, and that might scare them away from trying to get into it?
I don't know. I think it's a hard one, because you're likely to be a minority. So obviously you'll go somewhere and you're going to be more noticed, and that if you're more noticed, that's either a good thing because people pay more attention to you, but that can also be a bad thing. So even in that environment, you're going to be like shouted at more or seen more.
Yeah.
And I remember one of my friends who wanted to be in, like, they have group routines, and they allegedly said they didn't put her in this group routine because she would be the only Black one, and the judges wouldn't really look at her and like look for all her mistakes in the way that they wouldn't if there were like 5 white girls. But I think as well, it's not really seen as like necessarily like a Black sport. So it's, I don't know, I'm speaking as a woman, so it's very different. And a man will probably say something completely different to me. I think in terms of women, it's seen as like a bit like dance, so it's not really an issue. I think in terms of men, because it's seen like dance, it becomes an issue. And there's sort of things tied in around masculinity. People don't want to be kind of like performing on a carpet, essentially, which is what you have to do for one of your pieces as a man. There's so many things that are like really important to it, like strength, power, which are really good, which men value really highly, stereotypically, obviously. But I think it's much harder to get probably like young Black boys into it than it is young Black girls, definitely, because of that kind of self-awareness and sort of insecurity around what labels are going to be attached to you if you do that kind of sport.
Yeah, I thought that because I think growing up, I was close to doing cheerleading in year 6 when I was younger because it looked cool, because I saw like the guys doing backflips and stuff, and I said, yeah, I want to do that. But like when I remember trying to ask, and then the teacher said, no, you can't do that, you're a boy. So then I think things like that, then obviously I could have been a cheerleader, I could have done anything in gymnastics, but sometimes when you get that initial no in the beginning, then you're like, okay, fine, I'll just go play football. So it's like I definitely feel it depends how you are treated earlier that will shape it.
Yeah, totally. And I think it is that first contact that you have that's really important. It's like of anything in life, isn't it? Like that first contact you have with something really determines how you're going to see it.
Yeah.
So both sports have different reputations, but still struggling to break into the limelight. Why do you think that is? I think it is just because of that dominance of football and that sort of over how much money is pumped into it. Like, especially now, there's football on every single day, like high level football as well, not even like rubbish football, because of COVID and all the games are really compressed together. So in terms of sport on TV, it's really hard to find a slot where football isn't on. And just what's on is always going to be the easiest thing for people to access. And also, you know, other sports are always on at funny times. Like the NFL show, like after match of the day at like midnight when everyone's kind of fallen asleep during match of the day. The athletics is always on like a Sunday morning when no one really wants to watch athletics. They want to like lie in and stuff. And the money as well, I think. I don't know if you have any ideas.
I don't know. I think a lot of it comes down to, because I see it as the reason why I didn't play much basketball during PE is because the PE teachers didn't want to. So I think if you put it into a bigger scale, the people that decide what happens with these sports, they probably don't care about basketball. So it's very simple. It's like, I think even when you look at athletics and who decides who gets the funding, there's not that many black people in athletics that get the funding from GB. So it's like, I think it is a lot of gatekeeping at the end of the day. A lot of like, they just don't want to see it because even there's not enough on every single like leisure centre. There's a badminton court. There's no courts like specially made for basketball. So it seems like, I don't know, maybe they just don't want people playing basketball. Maybe they're happy with football. Football does amazing. And because it's like, even people call like rugby like a Tory sport. I've heard certain people call it that. So technically those people are in charge. So rugby's always going to be there. Football's going to be there because the people that make the decisions are there. So I think we need more people that take advantage of all sports rather than just nitpicking, because it's always going to be football and rugby. We know that. So there needs to be a change, because if you don't fall into any of those categories, then you're left out.
Yeah, and I think it's that like lifelong argument, isn't it? That they don't put money into it, so people aren't interested in it, so they don't put money into it.
Yeah.
Like there's no facilities, so there's no one wants to do it.
Yeah.
But then they don't make facilities because no one's doing it. So it becomes like you get trapped.
It's incredible.
But yeah, in terms of what am I looking forward to in my sport as a black person this year, I think getting off Zoom gymnastics classes.
Yeah.
I'm literally dying. I'm so fed up of Zoom. I'm so fed up of like everyone that I teach seeing what my house looks like, and like having to always tidy up before, like feeling self-conscious that I've left something like out that's like that children are going to see, like my work, which is confidential or something.
Yeah.
And just getting back into a real gym that's like bigger than my living room.
Yeah.
And yeah, just getting more people involved, having more people access the sport, because it's like out there in facilities, even doing it outside, anything but doing it in my house is basically what I'm looking forward to for this year once the restrictions ease.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to basketball just growing in the UK. It really is. A lot more people are playing video games that related to basketball. A lot more people are watching YouTube. Just NBA is now being shown on Sky Sports. Obviously, if something's on Sky Sports, it's going to get a lot more people going to see it. And they've added the British Basketball League onto Sky Sports, so that's going to help more people get involved in basketball. I just want basketball to be more accepted, really. And I think it's not much to ask for. It's just acceptance. It's just the ability to see it more, the ability to, just more funding at the end of the day. I don't want every kid to think, like every kid's going to want to be David Beckham because they are aware of David Beckham, but I want other kids to see a LeBron James, to see an Ovi Soko. Everyone, like I want people to grow up and say, yeah, I want to be a basketball player from the UK. So it's like, I think the more time goes on and just the more people that get involved, the more big names that get involved in British basketball, it's going to help massively. So I'm looking forward to that in 2021. Yeah,
and I think, well, who knows if it's going to be an Olympic year or not. It seems like really tense at the moment as to whether that will happen. But I think the Olympics are always a really good way for people to get into new sports.
Yeah, 100%.
Sort of basketball is always really popular. I know gymnastics is always really popular. and sort of all the other sport athletics as well. So hopefully, if it does happen and it is on our screens, a lot more people sort of post July, August will be getting in touch with us and trying to get involved.
Yeah, that's the way forward.